For the Cleveland Browns in 2022, they made the headlines for pretty much all the wrong reasons, mostly, I guess, where they made this massive offseason trade last year to go and acquire Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans. The quarterback from there. But the only thing was that he was still dealing with the controversial sexual assault allegations that kept him away from the Texans in 2021. And there was still no settlement at the time. So when nearly the offseason was over, the Deshaun Watson and those victims eventually came to that settlement, and the league had to make the decision of how many games Deshaun Watson was going to be suspended for. Multiple games, no games, the entire season. So they eventually settled on 11 games, if I recall correctly. So Deshaun Watson was basically unavailable for most of the season. He was suspended for those allegations, for all those allegations. So pretty much the Browns were not expected to make the playoffs. It was basically going to be an evaluation season for next year. Who was going to be a good fit around Deshaun Watson once he came back in action. Yeah, basically your typical skid marks year with an asterisk, I guess. So there were a few good players, I guess, but the defense was The defense was mostly and the offense was pretty much just as expected under backup quarterback Jacoby Brissett. But I mean, they still managed to rattle off a couple wins under Brissett. So by the time Deshaun Watson did come back and play, guess who? The Houston Texans. It was pretty obvious that he was rusty. After such a long time off, he looked rattled. He didn't know what to do. And to be honest, it was kind of expected, to be honest with you. And it stayed that way for the rest of the way. So the Browns finished 7-10. And now they're looking to hope for a comeback season from Deshaun Watson. That's pretty much their top goal. Regardless of what you think of the man, I mean, I'm not here to tell you what's good or bad about Deshaun Watson. We could talk about that all you want. I'm here to talk about the football perspective, the casual fan perspective of Deshaun Watson and the skid marks. This season is about hoping for a comeback. If you're a Browns fan, hoping for a comeback season for Deshaun Watson. How is he going to do as a quarterback coming off what was a rusty 5 games in 2022 after such a long layoff? So to do that, the Browns had to invest in the interior defensive line because they weren't really getting a lot of help in the inside pass rush because, the only guy there was Myles Garrett, and Jadeveon Clowney wasn't really a lot of help. Speaking of Myles Garrett, they needed another edge rusher because, like I said, Jadeveon Clowney wasn't a lot of help, and he threw a bitch fit on the last game of the regular season, and he didn't even play. They also needed a third option at receiver behind Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, because the receiving attack could use some more help there. So looking at some of their offseason moves, I mean, you did lose Jacoby Brissett to the Commanders, and backup running back Dearness Johnson. I mean, but those are pretty replaceable. So at least if you're the Browns, those are not big losses. So you can eat those. You can eat those losses. They need to re-sign key linebacker Anthony Walker, so a key part of that defense stays in Cleveland, and a big key part of the offensive line, which honestly was not too bad, but could be better. Center Ethan Posick, one of the better offensive linemen for the Browns. And then looking at some of their additions, defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson for the Minnesota Vikings. He was pretty solid for them last year. Safety Juan Thornhill from the Kansas City Chiefs. So a solid foundation for the Browns secondary, which is definitely needed. Ronnie McLeod at safety from the Indianapolis Colts. Receiver Elijah Moore. So there you go. Big receiver help needed. And they got it via trade from the New York Jets in return for a second-round pick. I do know that the Jets receiving room was getting kind of crowded over there. So Elijah Moore, this is your opportunity to go and show that, hey, I can shine here. And then they also added an edge rusher by the name of Zadarius Smith from the Minnesota Vikings. He also got traded in return for a 5th-round pick. So Myles Garrett potentially finally getting some help here. And then in the draft is where they did their big work. They got another receiver by the name of Cedric Tillman from Tennessee. So they're really beefing up that receiver room. So I like it. Nose tackle Siaki Ika from Baylor. Offensive tackle DeJuan Jones from Ohio State. Edge rusher Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. And never hurts to get a backup quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. And more. So when you look at the Browns offseason, sure, you can talk all the crap about Deshaun Watson, how he's not a good role model. I mean, again, we're not here to talk about that aspect. We're here to talk about the football aspect. The Browns, and on paper at least, should be much better on defense after they invested so much. They did the due diligence of what was needed in both free agency and the draft, and they beefed up that defensive line. They got some help from Myles Garrett by getting some interior help in Dalvin Tomlinson and a nose tackle by the name of Siaki Ika. I don't know if he's going to be a starter or if he's going to be a rotational piece, but either way, those things should help. And then getting another edge rusher in Zadarius Smith. He was good in Minnesota. Unfortunately, I don't know why he wanted to go out of there, but I don't know. I have no idea. But either way, along with getting some depth pieces like Isaiah McGuire in there, who they also drafted, this pass rush rotation is looking pretty solid for the Cleveland Browns. And looking at the receiver depth too, there's also some solid bright spots as well. Because, as I said, getting Deshaun Watson some help to help him bounce back, to help him shake off that rust completely, was very key. I mean, looking at some of those training camp videos, I mean, it's getting there. He's getting his rhythm back. So I like these moves to go and trade for Elijah Moore and draft more receivers to go alongside Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. So it's pretty much on Deshaun Watson to go and prove that, yeah, I'm an asshole, but I can still play, even though I'm an asshole. So looking at some of their key games of 2023, obviously the big one is your very first game against a former reigning AFC champion, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the reigning division champion Bengals. So it's an opportunity to try and make a statement against Joe Burrow and the Bengals at home. So the Browns got to make a strong impression here if they want to try to challenge for their division. And actually, 3 of your first 4 games are within the division. And then the very next game, you got to go to Pittsburgh to take on Kenny Pickett and the Steelers. And then 2 weeks later, you got to host the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson in their strong passing attack on paper. So a lot of tough division games to start out the season. And then week 6, you host the San Francisco 49ers. Regardless of who they have at quarterback, you cannot doubt their defense. And even if your offensive line is strong, you never can doubt their pass rush. And then a little bit later down the line, week 12 in Denver against the Broncos. I mean, again, it could be an even battle there. It could be an even battle there between Watson and Russell Wilson. You never know. So some of my questions entering the 2023 season for the Browns, I mean, obviously, it's pretty much the one I've been asking this whole time. Will the Browns get the Deshaun Watson of old? Coming off a full offseason of prep. I mean, you pretty much had 5 games of rusty Deshaun Watson. There were some flashes here and there, but the Browns certainly know that they can get more. So only time will tell, but that's the good thing of the Browns and Watson having this much time, not making the playoffs, because you've pretty much had about 7 months to get Deshaun Watson back up to speed. So at this point, it's pretty much all on Deshaun Watson to shake off that rust fully, and again, prove to the world that, yeah, my reputation is fucked, but I can still ball. And then look at the running back position. Who's going to be the backup behind Nick Chubb? Because they didn't re-sign Kareem Hunt, and they let Dearness Johnson go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So there's running backs there, but it's like, who's going to be that next man up? Especially considering that, what if Nick Chubb goes down with an injury. So something to keep an eye on. Don't let that fly under the radar, because Nick Chubb has been the engine in that. He's been that engine in that offense for like a long while, considering that the Browns didn't really have a quarterback until perhaps Watson. So overall, if Deshaun Watson, has these similar struggles as he did when he came back in 2022, then, well, forget the Browns having a bounce back year. Expect them to have maybe a similar record as they did in 2022. But if Watson is able to turn back the clock into his own old productive self, then I do think the Browns, with considering all the moves that they made in the offseason, all these solid moves on both offense and defense, I think they could be a strong X Factor team in this division race. I don't think they'll make a lot of noise in the playoffs, but in this competitive AFC North, they can make some damage. I think they can make some damage as long as Deshaun Watson is back to full speed, back at full go. The Browns, I think they can go 11-6. I mean, that's crazy to say. I'd say 10-7 or 11-6. It's not out of the realm of the possibility that the skid marks may not be the skid marks in 2023.